So I'm glad you mentioned journalism because let me tell you something. I read you went to Columbia after that, right?
Yeah, I went to Columbia after.
Okay, so I read your thesis, right?
Yeah.
On sexuality and what was it called? Eat the booty like a bag of groceries,
Yeah.
right? First of all, when I read the title, I was like, "Eat the booty like a bag of groceries." What the fuck? And then I read, listen, that shit was mind blowing. So I have some questions for you, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was about to just go, just focus on you it being at NYU and everything. But when you mentioned journalism, I was like, I got to touch on this. So okay, I need you to elaborate on a few things, right? So you talk about black hypersexuality, okay, and about black men being caught between this constant threat of sexual subjugation and the possibility of sexual freedom, right? Which I found fascinating, right? Could you elaborate a little bit on that for me?
Yeah. So, okay. So, what I just want to take one step back. Like, what prompted me to write this thesis? So, like she got to eat the booty like groceries. That was an Omarion song.
Yeah.
Janae Aiko at the time came out, and there was a lot of talk on the internet about like analinguists and like men getting their booty eaten, and like Trick Daddy was saying he was into it.
Yeah.
And I was reading the comments.
Austin likes his booty eat.
Oh yeah, yeah. No judgment. I'm
No
all
judgment, no judgment.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like I was in the comments of these forums, and people were like, "Oh, Trick Daddy's gay," and like I was so intrigued by how someone could be considered gay just from the sex act they're doing, regardless of the participants. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter if it was a heterosexual couple, but like if if it's a man and a woman, doesn't matter. But just the fact that they did this anal act, like that's gay. Just like
Yeah.
oral sex with anal stuff is, or butt play as they call it, like is gay.
Yo, I mean, we grew up like that. Like, yo, don't touch my butt.
So yeah, like I was intrigued by that.
Yeah.
And then I do know, and I was, Africana studies major undergrad, and in graduate school, I studied mostly African American studies. So I knew that hypersexuality for Black men is something ingrained even as back, like as far back as like the colonial period, like pre-colonial explorers. They spoke a lot in their travel diaries about like these Black men that are like sexually insatiable. So they're writing these things.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. Yeah. There's like tons of like slave trade writings from like European explorers going into Africa. And they would write about Black people as if they were animals, right?
Yeah.
They would call the women just like hyper fertile. Like their whole purpose is to like have multiple children, and they seem like disconnected from their children. They just popping them out. Like it's really fucked up stuff.
And these are just assumptions they just made.
Yeah, it's just from observations, and
Yeah.
and these were treated seriously, like within the like explorer community, within like academic journals. Like this was early anthropology.
Yeah.
So there was already tons of background information for European people to view Black men as hypersexual. So then, you come to the U.S. Now we're in the slave era, and the slave masters, they're legit afraid of like this pervasive hypersexuality of Black men. It was like you have to keep them away from the white women because they're just so hypersexual, they can't be controlled. So that stuff still proliferates into culture today.
Yes, definitely.
Totally.
Definitely.
And it's in like all kind of mass marketing and media always today. Yeah. It's still very much true today.
Yeah. And to speak to what you said earlier about any sort of anal play being linked to homosexuality and whatnot. The great irony in that is when you're watching sports, you see athletes slap each other in the ass, like
yeah.
And there is no, because I guess sports makes it okay. There is some sort of it's a pass.
Yeah,
we're doing something extra masculine and shit like that. And so I'm gonna smack you on the ass, but I can do that. But,
yeah, it's like a safe space, and there's definitely writers have written about the locker room as this like safe space for like homoeroticism and exploration, but within this container of like a hyper masculine idea of sports and team sports. So I feel like because it's like, oh, but we're football players, we're basketball players, like it like yeah, it's like this accepted space for it. But then outside the locker room, it's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not okay. You are gay if you're partaking in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant that you use that title to open up that topic. You talk about black sexuality being considered perverse and worthy of suspension and increased monitoring, right? And the shift is also in tandem with incarceration, right? And the rate of black men being locked up, the over-policing, specifically the over-policing of our neighborhoods. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah. So when I was, exploring these topics for this thesis, I just made so many connections where I was just like, okay, this is so fascinating that, there were articles written about like the booty eating renaissance, and it was like, as most things are, like when white people do it, there's no racial connection to it, right? So it's like,
None.
it almost feels like white people have like such a safe space to explore sexuality with no implications, right? So it's like, why can't black people do that? Like, what is making it so challenging for black men to explore sexuality in any way, and black women too? And my thesis advisor was like, yo, you should look into like some of the AIDS crisis. And I was like, damn, that's so real, because I'm sure you remember the down low, right?
Of course.
The down low had the black people on a chokehold.
Yeah.
Because they were just like, if there was this one, I feel like it was Terry McMillan. I feel like it was her, where her husband like was having sex with other men and passed her AIDS. It was some author or whatever. And then that just became like, everyone had a moral panic. They were just like, this could happen to me. Like, so I feel like the policing of black sexuality was even then too, because you have AIDS directly connected to homosexuality, and then black people were getting heavily affected by AIDS, right? We are one of the most infected populations. So I feel like there felt this need to morally police like sexuality. And then you tie that into respectability politics, right? Because black people do want to aspire to like move up in society and be seen a certain way. So if we are seen or tied to hypersexuality, then that's seen as counterproductive to like social escalation, right? Yeah. So it's really hard. And I think that is why there's also, in increased monitoring socially, but then as well, like the cops do monitor black people excessively. Stop and frisk was super prevalent, even back when I was writing this article or this thesis in grad school. And I couldn't help but notice, like, when people are stopped and frisked, it's always like the exterior, like if you're always back facing. You
mentioned that on assume the position.
Always
right?
assume the position. You're always from the back, and like it's like a subconscious, like that is the least powerful, the most vulnerable position for someone to be in with their back facing you, right?
Yeah.
Like, so these were just all some of the things that I was like thinking about, where like why like anal play for black men is just such a touchy subject.
So two things to touch on the assume the position, which is ironic because in rap music you hear that, which it's tied to sexuality, right? And being patted down, and comparing all of that. And spread myself off camera. We were talking about I was locked up in LA County for a little bit of time, and one of my duties was to work in the kitchen. And every time after we finished our jobs, after working in the kitchen, we had to come upstairs to a gigantic holding cell, and all of us had to pull our pants down, open up our ass cracks, bend over, and get examined. And you got the sense that it was just this thing that was passed down, from generational policing to generational policing. And it was obviously, some people hide razor blades in their ass and this, that, and the ass, but it was a prolonged thing, and you could tell it was to humiliate rather than to just thoroughly search. And everyone would be like, why do I have to hold my ass open this long? But it was like this humiliation thing. So it's really interesting when I read your article to see how strongly that was linked, because especially for a person like me that experienced it, right? Yeah. But I never linked the two, touching on the whole down low thing, right? Some time ago, I did a anthology series called the DL Chronicles, right? and I didn't want to do it, and because I didn't want to be looked at as gay. So I went to my acting teacher, which was a gay Latino man, and I was like, yo, I booked this job. They want me to do, they do some gay stuff. I don't want to do it. And he was like, man, what the fuck are you? Are you booking jobs right now? Are you somebody I know? And I was like, nah. He was like, well, the work is all that's important. You know what I'm saying? That's all that's important. Go do the work. And he's like, if it's a good script, go ahead and do it. I did it. I didn't think anything of it, and it turned into this huge thing, like
really
huge thing, right? Where there was like a billboard on La Brea with me with my shirt off, going like this, and then, it was, and people used to run up, mainly gay men, used to run up on me all through the Hollywood area and be like, oh, and call me by the character's name and stuff like that. And obviously, I'm young, I don't know, and I'm not homophobic, but I am kind of homophobic,
right? Yeah.
So I'm like, and they call me by the character's name and be like, oh, you didn't want to talk to me, and I'd be like, oh, get away from me, leave me alone. And it would be to the point where it was extremely embarrassing. The billboard was right next to California Chicken Cafe right on, it was on La Brea with California Chicken Cafe right now. So, and California Chicken Cafe was like my favorite place to go get chicken and salad.
Yeah.
So every time I would go in there, the fucking workers would be like, oh, it's Boo. You don't need to call me by the character name. And I'd be like, man, shut the fuck up, man. Stop saying that. Just give me some chicken and get up out of here.
Oh, my God.
And they would say that. And I was on Facebook at the time. And so people would reach out to me and be like, yo, we love that episode of you. Can we fly you out to talk and this, that, and other? And I'd be like, nah. I'd be like, nah, I got it, and I had to go do a panel. I didn't want to do it. I had to go give out a GLAAD award. I didn't want to do that. Because I just didn't want to be viewed as gay. And I remember my mom, we're Jamaican, so Jamaicans are extremely homophobic.
I mean, there's still
super homophobic.
Anti-gay laws on the books in Jamaica right now.
Yes, facts. Yeah. And my mom said my father called her and was like, Jesus Christ, O'Neal. said the movie, my friend tell him about the movie, O'Neal in the movie with a man kissing him and this. And my mom was like, yo, just relax. He's acting. He's like, no, man. It was a big, big thing. And for a long time, I was embarrassed about it. And I'm like, man, I don't want to be seen gay. And then, as I got older and whatnot, learned and got more educated. But I discovered I still had issues because when I would be in a sexual relationship with a woman and she would try to, touch my butt, I'd clench my butt cheeks really, really tight. Like, don't touch my butt. And I'm like, I don't want you to play with my butt because if you play with my butt, you think So I had never linked all three. Yeah. And then when I was reading your article, I was like, God damn, this all makes sense. So Michelle, I gotta ask, how have you seen some of these themes play out with your interactions with Black men?
So I've definitely seen it play out in like my own dating life. I feel I am definitely a very sex positive person. I don't consider myself to be like heteronormative Black woman in that way. Like I'm definitely more like gender non-conforming. Like I'm not like, I don't think if a man like wants to have their like anus stimulated in any way, like it makes them gay.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like there have been Black men that have been comfortable asking for those things in my sexual interactions with them and a bit more like open-minded to those things. But they have told me like, yo, I would never ever do this with someone else, or like I would never tell my friends about this. Like,
so you've provided a comfortable space for them.
And I think that that's like an unusual place for Black men. Like I think especially in the last few years of dating, I realized that like even I too like have fallen into some of the same like hypersexualizing Black men. Yeah. And a lot of it is, coming from talking to other women and being like, well, if they're not trying to have sex, then they probably don't like you. Like all these assumptions. And there's a lot of Black men that are not like super hypersexual and they feel a pressure to meet that standard.
What you mean? They don't want no ass?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And they feel societal pressure to meet that. They know that like if they're not like, if they don't come to the dating experience with like an energy like I'm definitely trying to fuck you, like they have already experienced women being like, are they gay? Like, are they not? Like, that is something that they internalize.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm just like more sex positive and not so gender, like I don't follow gender norms in this rigid way. I think some Black men that I've dated have been able to like explore outside of that boundary and realize, oh wow, like I really was like feeding into this pressure because I know that Black women also think that if I'm not trying to have sex with them, I must not be into them.
Now, see, I'm glad you said that because that's something, I might get in trouble for saying this, so I'm trying to word this the best way possible. But that's something that doesn't get addressed.
Yeah.
You know, I've had women say, "Are you gay?" Over a number of things. I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about?" You know, and then I do what most men do, Black men do. I masculine up, and I'll beat the nigga ass you ever kick. I'll say something crazy to like gain my masculinity back. Like I'll beat any nigga ass you know. You know, bring him in front of me. I'll do something right now that's extra masculine and prove it to you. You know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women, Black women, don't do something for me. Don't admit to the fact that the pressure that they put on Black men to be hyper masculine and sexual, they don't admit that. And then when we do all that, and we're like, what's up with the what's up? I'm trying to fuck or whatever, you know, or we do the masculine thing or whatever is considered, you know, because the bad boy thing isn't just applied to Black women; it's applied to women in general.
Yeah.
Women just like a dark entity and a dark thing around men because they think it's exciting and you know, oh, you know, it gets their loins going and whatnot. But they don't really admit to the fact that there's pressure that they put on us to kind of be bad and cool and you know want to fuck and be hypersexual to a certain extent, you know. And then when we do it, we catch heat for it.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm glad you said that.
And I have Black male friends too that like, you know, they've had if they don't lead with like a super hypersexual energy in pursuing a woman, like the woman will be like, "Are you gay?" Right? And it's like takes them off guard. They're like, "Why is this person like society told me that if this person is interested in me, they should be dying to have sex with me like the minute that they can." Yes. And when they don't, I feel like that's when a lot of Black men that I'm friends with have been asked like, "Are they gay? Are you gay? Are you whatever?" And for some of them, I feel like they've felt even more pressure to perform sexually after that to basically like reclaim their masculinity and sexuality and like heterosexuality.
Now, that I'm glad you really said, because when you couple that with the fact that we use our penis to take back our masculinity after we've been emasculated by, you know, obviously white people and oppression and whatnot, that's a bad combination.
It is.
And then when you add that third part of it that you just said about the pressure to perform, we don't have conversations. Like being with someone and saying, "Hey, do you like this? Do you not like that? Am I touching you in the wrong place? Should I not kiss you there? Where should I put my hand?" What? We don't have that conversation. We go into it like, "Man, I'm gonna figure this shit out."
Yeah, and there's this weird expectation. So this is another autistic thing for me. There's this weird expectation that men should know how you like things sexually without you talking about it.
Yeah.
And that always blew my mind because, like, you know, one of the traits of autism is like reading body language and like nonverbal cues super hard. So my friends make fun of me, but I'm always like, "Hey, like, I like you. I want to have sex with you. Are you down for this? Yes, no." Like I'm very like upfront because if I have to read between the lines and like guess like what your intent, I can't do it.
You've actually said that to somebody.
Yes, I always do. I feel like
are they taken back? Or they're like,
yes, they're always taken back.
Yeah.
It's also a gender norm thing too. They're like, "Whoa, I'm supposed to be the one telling, you know, I'm supposed to be the one pursuing you. I'm supposed to be the one, you know, initiating the sexual thing." And they're always off put. Or often, some of them are like pleasantly surprised and like, "Oh, this is relieving.
Yeah.
I don't have to read and guess like if you're into it." And I do this also because I know they're going to get it wrong because my body language is also not typical and doesn't always reflect what I'm interested in as an autistic person too. So I feel like that's the only sexual interactions I do like is like very much a verbal consent. Like, "Do you like this? Like, what do you like?" before we even have sex. Yeah. But I realize with my friends, when I talk about this with some of my women friends, they're just like, "Whoa, that's crazy." Like they'll make fun of men at times for not knowing how to like, you know, eat their pussy correctly and stuff. Yeah. And I'll be like, "Well, have you said what you liked?" And they're like, "Nah, like what they should know. Like, why? I can't tell them." I'm like, "Why can't you tell them?" Yeah,
it's this taboo thing. It's almost as if like you need to remove and correct me if I'm wrong here, you have to remove the carnality out of it for a moment. Is carnality a word? I keep saying carnality. Is that a fucking word?
I don't know if that's a word, but I understand what you mean. Yeah.
I create word. I don't understand why people judge me for creating words. That's how words got made. They got created. Carnality is a word now. Look it up. Is that correct? See what?
Temporal or worldly, lack of spiritual vitality or maturity.
So let's digress for a quick second. Yo, I'm rarely ever wrong when I make up words. I'll just be like, is this a word? But my fucking lexicon is fucking gangster. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Let me go back to that. Remove the carnality out of it and have a conversation and say, hey, let's talk about what you like and let's talk about what I like. It's taken me years to be able to do that, and I still have to force it out of myself. Like, I'm about to do some corny ass shit and ask her what she like. It's corny than a motherfucker.
With corny, everyone thinks everything's corny. That's actually really holding us back too, because there's nothing corny about verbalizing what you want sexually. Like, this is why people are having horrible sex, because no one is comfortable verbalizing what they want, and you're asking people to guess and read and like, and this is, you know, it. If you want to enjoy sex, and especially for myself, like, I can't enjoy sex without verbalizing what I want.
Yeah.
Or else it's just not going to be good.
Yeah. Corny is when it's almost like when you come out of the womb as a young black man, the first couple words you get handed is, "Hey man, pause," and corny. You're gonna use it a lot. You use it a lot, my young niggas. Go out there and just use them. Yeah, I mean, you. Let's just be honest, man. Let's just be honest. It's linked to vulnerability.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh God, I gotta be vulnerable. I'd much rather just jump into this pool and try to figure out what she likes and roll the dice and hope I roll the dice correctly. And it's not a good thing if you happen to get lucky and roll the dice correctly and you do please a woman. Because then you are under this foolish notion and impression that, I know what women like sexually. I got it all figured out.
Oh yeah, now it's like, it's the one size fits all. It's like, oh, this worked one time. Yeah. And then sadly also, I think some men too, like in the absence of feedback, they assume they killed it, which, you know, this is a thing too. And then you start repeating it. And if no one is comfortable saying, hey, like, I actually don't like that, you know, how will you know? There's no feedback. You can't change anything.
Yeah.
And, you know, honestly, porn too, and just like tons of sexual imagery on the internet, like, men often do use those things they see in porn and assume that that's like what women want sexually.
1000%.
Right? And it's like, 1000%. That's actually for entertainment, like, and it's for entertainment. And I think a lot of men and probably women too, like, there's so much like gender norms tied to which role you should play in sex, with like, women want to play a passive role because someone told them that. They see it on the internet. They see it in porn. Men want to always play the dominant role. And it's like, if those roles ever shift, now everyone's questioning people's sexuality, people, whatever.
We don't feel like men. Yeah. We don't feel like we're adequate enough. We feel like we're being undermined and emasculated, which gets tied back to, you know, slavery and being policed and all that stuff. And then it trumps up all this trauma out of us, and we don't know how to express it or why we're feeling this way. We just know we need to act.
Yeah.
And then we have problems.
And like, vulnerability is hot, and I feel like it's something that I wish.
You don't think that shit corny? You ain't never looked at a motherfucker and be like, me corny as hell.
So yes, I have before. But I too, like, I had to. I will admit that I was definitely fell prey to a lot of the toxic stuff that a lot of other women too were like, oh, this is corny that he does this or whatever, like. Because you start to associate like a lot of this like hyper masculinity with like, okay, that's someone who's attractive. That's like a strong man. That's a man that, you know, is going to be sexually turning you on. And then it stopped turning me on because it was bad.
Yeah. You know, I had a conversation with a friend a few days about that. Like, you'll hear the woman say she like a thug, a Tupac type dude, or, you know, back in the 90s and shit. Back in the 90s, they'd be like, you know, Timberland boots and, you know, Soldier, Beyonce, Destiny Child, and Soldier. You know what I'm saying? But then when you get with someone like that and this hyper masculinity doesn't get turned off, this aggression doesn't get turned off, and he's on 24/7, and there's no whatever tenderness or soft interaction, then it's like, it gets redundant.
It gets really redundant. It's very one-dimensional too.
Yes. Yeah. But then, I'm just gonna be real. You guys, you know, women, black women, make us feel like we need to, because It's a confusing thing. I saw Tyrese on some
Oh, so
Tyrese. I heard Tyrese say the other day on some radio morning show that, you know, you guys say that you want black men to be open and to cry and to talk and whatnot, but then he was like, but then when we do it, y'all roasters and cookers, you know, like obviously,
That's
what
real.
more do you want from me? Like, they cook him. They fucking destroyed him
yeah.
for crying and being emotionally open and whatnot. So to all of us, we see that shit. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, when I saw him crying and then I saw the comments, you immediately go to the comments.
Comments are everything.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh man, I ain't never doing that shit. I ain't going out like that, because you get fearful, because you like, they're not cooking me like they're cooking Tyrese. Just they're crying and they cooking. They don't have any sympathy for him. You know, Michelle, we could go on and on and on for hours about this, and I'm gonna just tell you right now. I say this to a lot of guests and whatnot, but we definitely have to have you on ASAP, because we need to delve into your thesis, because there's so much more to her thesis than what we even talked about. We just skimmed the top. So promise me you'll come back on.
I would love to come back. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been another episode of Three Black Guys on the Couch. We would like you to like and to subscribe if you want more content like this. You should want more content like this, because Michelle is amazing. I'm amazing. My two co-hosts, they'll be back. They're amazing, even though they not like me. You shouldn't really care that much about them, but I digress. Three Black Guys on the Couch. Thank you.